Ever feel like you're trying to navigate by the stars, but you forgot your map?
Yeah. Lost in the cosmos a little bit.
That's kind of how it feels sometimes when I'm trying to understand these deep gospel topics, you know?
Totally.
Which is why I'm so excited for this deep dive. We're taking a look at Sister Tracy Y. Browning's talk, Seeking Answers to Spiritual Questions.
From October General Conference.
That's the one. And let me tell you, she had me hooked right from the first line, talking about, get this, Pluto.
Oh, man. Pluto brings back memories.
Right. And I was like, what does this have to do with, spiritual questions?
Such a good hook, though.
But it totally worked.
It did.
So tell me, why start with a lesson on, well, a former planet?
Well, she uses it to illustrate how even something we thought was a sure thing, like Pluto being a planet all those years, can change.
Okay, so we're talking about being open to new understanding, even when it comes to our beliefs.
Exactly. Just like scientists had to reevaluate the solar system based on new discoveries, we've got to be open to expanding our spiritual knowledge, too. And, asking questions is a big part of that.
But isn't there a danger in, questioning everything? I mean, where's the line between healthy curiosity and just, doubting everything?
And that's where she gets into the how of seeking truth. It's not just about asking any old question.
Right.
It's about approaching it with, as she puts it, a deep desire, a sincere heart.
So intention matters.
It does.
Okay, so I get that we need to put in some effort here, be intentional, but we can't exactly, build a rocket to go find answers in space. What'd she suggest?
Well, she actually gives us these tools.
Spiritual tools.
Exactly, like spiritual telescopes.
Yeah.
To connect with, well, divine wisdom.
So how do we, what are these tools, these telescopes?
She talks about scripture study. They're seeking revelation through prophets. Then there's attending the temple and prayer. All these ways we can tune in, find answers.
It's like having a direct line, but instead of calling someone, we're connecting with, well, a higher power.
Exactly. It's not always instant, though, right?
Oh, I was just thinking it's not like instant messaging. Sometimes you're waiting for that reply.
Right. She doesn't promise instant answers.
So no magic 8-ball for gospel questions.
Not quite. It's about consistently using those tools, those channels, to find deeper meaning and truth.
Okay, so I'm starting to see this is a lot more than just, a quick Google search. It takes effort, dedication. But let's be real, what about those times when no matter how hard you're searching, the answers just don't seem to come? What about then?
Ah, that is where we stumble upon one of the hardest but most important lessons. It's what Sister Browning calls learning to love the space between.
The space between. Okay, now you've really got me curious. What's that even mean?
It's that period of waiting, not having all the answers right away. Like, think about how long scientists spent, decades, developing those powerful telescopes to study the universe. Spiritual growth, well, it has its own kind of development phase, too.
Hold on, are you saying that when I feel like I'm getting radio silence from, well, upstairs, it's not that I'm being ignored, it's more like maybe I need to be, more prepared?
It's an interesting way to think about it, isn't it? And she makes a good point. Like, imagine trying to explain, I don't know, astrophysics to someone who's never even looked at the stars.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Exactly. Sometimes it takes time to build that foundation of understanding. It takes time. Like, think about baking bread. You can't rush that rising process. Got to let the dough rest and develop.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. But it's still so hard sometimes, when you're in that waiting period. You're craving those answers. What do we do then when it feels like, spiritual crickets?
Well, Sister Browning talks about covenant keeping and uses Adam as an example. Remember.
You mean with the sacrifices and all that?
Exactly.
That whole thing has always seemed a little, I don't know.
Mysterious?
Yeah, like why was he making offerings if he didn't even fully get it? But Sister Browning, she really brings that story to life,
It really makes you think, because the whole idea that sometimes you've got to act in faith, even when you don't have all the answers, is like, okay, I trust you enough to do this, even though I don't see the whole picture yet. It's powerful.
It really is. But how does that, acting without fully understanding, connect with actually gaining knowledge?
Because that very act of obedience, that trust in God, even when we don't get it, that can be what helps us understand more.
So it's more than just, I don't know, sitting around waiting for answers to appear. It's about, living in a way that shows we're ready to learn.
Exactly. Think about it. We learn by doing, right? Right. You can read about playing an instrument all day long, but until you pick it up, you'll never really get it.
So action is like this bridge between what we're seeking and actually finding it?
Exactly. And, it's interesting. Sister Browning uses another great example to illustrate this. Naaman.
Oh, yeah, the guy with leprosy, right.
You know,
He had to, what was it, bathe in the river
7 times.
7 times. I can't imagine thinking, yep, that'll do it.
Right. He probably had his own ideas about how that healing should happen, just like we do sometimes with our spiritual growth. We
Yeah.
think we've got it all figured out.
I think we know better.
Exactly. But what's so amazing about Naaman is that he eventually humbles himself and does what he's told, even though it didn't make sense to her.
And that's when things change for him, right? When he finally just lets go and trusts.
Yes. And it's that trust, that humility
Yeah.
that allows for the miracle.
It's like he had to, I don't know, take that leap of faith to get where he needed to be.
It's true. And that's what's so interesting, right? Sometimes the answer isn't about figuring it all out in our minds, but more about, I don't know, surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
So it's about being open to change, allowing ourselves to be, well, changed by what we're learning.
Yes. It's about transformation, not just information.
Which, now that you mention it, kind of goes back to what we were saying about Pluto.
Oh, you mean how our perspective had to shift?
Yeah. To accept that it wasn't a planet anymore.
Right. Talk about a change in thinking.
I bet some people were pretty attached to, the old way. 9 planets, that's how it had always been.
People get set in their ways.
But in the end, accepting that new understanding, it led to a more, I guess, accurate view.
Exactly. And isn't that true for us, too? I mean, when we hold on to outdated beliefs, limited perspectives, it holds us back.
So how do we do that? How do we become more, I don't know, flexible, open to new ways of seeing things, even when it's hard?
Well, Sister Browning says it starts with trust.
Trust.
Trust in God, in His plan, in the promptings we receive.
So instead of trying to have all the answers, we focus on what? Just taking that next step.
The next right step, even if we can't see the whole staircase.
Wow. Okay, so as we finish up here, is there one thing you hope our listeners take away from Sister Browning's talk, from our deep dive here?
I think the biggest thing is that seeking spiritual knowledge, it's not about reaching some final destination. It's a journey with twists and turns, and sometimes maybe even a planetary demotion or two.
I like that. It's about asking questions, sincerely trying to learn and grow, and trusting that the answers will come.
And, maybe those moments of uncertainty, those spaces between, they're actually some of the most important parts of the journey.
Because that's where the real growth happens.
You got it. Who knows what we'll discover when we're brave enough to keep searching, keep trusting.